Welcome to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful you've chosen to join us today. Tell us, which part of the world are you watching from? Big city? Small town? Country? We'd love to know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Silent Calculations. Dominic Russo stared at the blueprints spread across his home office desk, the soft glow of his desk lamp illuminating the detailed designs. At 42, he had built Russo Construction into one of Philadelphia's most respected firms through sheer determination and ruthless precision. His weathered hands, calloused from years of work before he became the boss, traced the outline of what would become his masterpiece, a luxury apartment complex that would cement his legacy. A text notification pulled his attention away. His wife, Vanessa. Again, working late. Don't wait up. The third time this week. Dominic didn't reply, instead switching to the security app on his phone. The GPS tracker he'd installed on Vanessa's car weeks ago showed her at the Bellevue Hotel downtown, not at her charity committee meeting, as she'd claimed. Dominic's face remained impassive as he opened his safe and extracted a leather-bound journal. Inside was a meticulously detailed log. Dates, times, locations, discrepancies in Vanessa's stories. He made another entry, his handwriting methodical and precise, just like everything else in his life. They had met 6 years ago when his company renovated the art gallery, where she worked as a curator. Vanessa Harmon had captivated him with her sophisticated charm and ambition that matched his own. Coming from old money, the Harmons had initially dismissed Dominic as unworthy of their daughter, a self-made man with rough edges and no pedigree. But Vanessa had seen his potential, or so he had thought. The marriage had been good at first. They complemented each other, his drive and her social connections. They moved into Avalon Heights, the exclusive neighborhood where Dominic had always promised himself he'd live one day. But lately, things had changed. Subtle shifts in Vanessa's behavior, unexplained absences, and a coldness that had crept into their interactions. His phone rang. Mason Fletcher, his foreman and oldest friend. "You need to hear this, Dom," Mason said without preamble. Vanessa's car was seen at Walsh Estate Development's parking garage yesterday. Again, Preston Walsh, Dominic's competitor and the heir to a dynasty of developers who had looked down on him for years. The Walsh family represented everything Dominic had fought against. Privilege without merit, success without sacrifice. "You still collecting everything I asked for?" Dominic asked, his voice betraying no emotion. "Yeah, but Dom, maybe you should just confront her, man. This silent surveillance thing is... I don't move without certainty, Mason. You know that." Dominic closed the journal. "Keep me posted." After hanging up, Dominic walked to the window overlooking their manicured lawn. In the reflection, he saw not just himself, but the shadow of the boy who had clawed his way out of foster care, who had worked construction sites at 16, who had learned that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. He opened a hidden panel in his bookshelf, revealing a secondary safe. Inside was a USB drive containing financial records, property deeds, and legal documents that had taken months to prepare. Beside it lay a business card, Diana Wells, private investigator. Dominic hadn't survived by being naive. He had been watching the signs for months, preparing in silence. Vanessa thought she was being clever, but she had no idea who she was truly married to. "Let's see how this plays out," he murmured to himself, a cold smile forming on his lips. Chapter 2. The Evidence Mounts. Diana Wells slid the manila envelope across the table at the quiet diner on the outskirts of town. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, her eyes sharp from years of surveillance work. "You were right," she said simply. "Every Tuesday and Thursday at the Bellevue. Sometimes lunch meetings at Cristiano's. Always with the same person." Dominic didn't immediately open the envelope. "Preston Walsh." It wasn't a question. Diana nodded. "They're not exactly being careful anymore. These photos are from their last 3 meetings. The timestamps are in the corner." When Dominic finally reviewed the photographs, his expression didn't change. Vanessa and Preston, laughing over wine, holding hands across a restaurant table, entering a hotel elevator together, his hand on the small of her back. "There's more," Diana added, sliding over a second envelope. Audio transcripts from the bugs you had me place in her car. They're explicit about their plans. Dominic scanned the transcripts, his jaw tightening only slightly as he read their conversations. Preston, when are you going to leave him? Vanessa, soon. I just need to make sure I get what I deserve in the divorce. My family was right. He was always just a stepping stone. Preston, your family never liked him, did they? Vanessa, God, no. They tolerated him because I insisted. My sister Brooke says she always knew he wasn't good enough. The conversation continued, detailing how Preston would help her extract maximum value from the divorce, using his family's connections to ensure Dominic was left with nothing. There's one other thing, Diana said hesitantly. Your sister Natalie has been meeting with Vanessa. This news finally caused a flicker of surprise to cross Dominic's face. Natalie was his only family, the sister he had protected through their turbulent childhood, put through college with his early construction earnings. You're certain? Diana pushed forward a final photo, Natalie and Vanessa in deep conversation at a cafe 2 towns over. Appears your sister has been feeding Vanessa information about your finances, your schedule, even details about your childhood that could be unflattering if presented to the right judge. Dominic stared at the photo for a long moment. How long? At least 3 months. He nodded slowly, folding the photo carefully and placing it in his inner jacket pocket. Thank you, Diana. You'll find a final payment has already been transferred to your account. Dominic, Diana hesitated. I've known you since you supervised the renovation of my office building 5 years ago. Whatever you're planning is already in motion, he finished for her. I appreciate your concern. As he drove home, Dominic called his lawyer, Theodore Gaines. Ted, implement phase 1. Yes, everything's confirmed. No confrontation yet. Let them think they're in control a little longer. He paused, listening. Yes, including the property transfers. All of them. And Ted? Include Natalie in the surveillance. Full coverage. That evening, Dominic watched Vanessa move around their kitchen, preparing a salad for dinner. She wore an expensive silk blouse he'd never seen before, likely a gift from Preston. How was your charity meeting? He asked casually. Productive, she answered without looking up. We've finally decided on a venue for the summer gala. The Bellevue. The Bellevue, he repeated. Nice choice. I hear their executive suites have an excellent view of the city. Her hands paused briefly before continuing to chop vegetables. I wouldn't know about their suites. No, he asked, his voice neutral. That's surprising, considering how much time you spend there. Vanessa's knife clattered against the cutting board. When she turned to face him, her expression was a carefully composed mask of indignation. What are you implying, Dominic? He smiled, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Nothing at all, just making conversation. For a moment, fear flickered in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by calculation. She thought she was smarter than him. They all did. It was his greatest advantage. Later that night, he watched her typing furiously on her phone, no doubt warning Preston. Let them scramble, let them plot. Every move they made only entangled them further in the web he had been methodically spinning for months. Dominic returned to his office and made a call to Mason. It's time to move everything into position, he said. 1 week from now, exactly as planned. You sure about this, Dom? There's no coming back from it. Dominic looked at the family photo on his desk, him and Vanessa on their wedding day, both smiling. He turned it face down. I'm counting on that. Chapter 3, The Spectacle. The lawn of their Avalon Heights home was immaculate, the kind of perfect green that spoke of privilege and careful maintenance. It made the scene unfolding upon it all the more jarring. Vanessa stood on the front steps, her face contorted with rage as she flung Dominic's tailored suits and dress shirts onto the grass. Her sister Brooke and parents watched from the bay window, champagne flutes in hand, as if attending a theater performance they'd long anticipated. Get out, you failure, Vanessa screamed, her voice carrying across the manicured lawns of their neighbors. I want you gone. Everyone was right about you. Dominic stood motionless on the sidewalk, his expression unreadable as he watched his clothes accumulate on the lawn. Curious neighbors had begun to gather, some pretending to collect mail or walk dogs while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. Brooke opened the window, leaning out with a smirk. "Told you she was too good for him," she called loudly, ensuring the gathering crowd could hear. His humiliation was public, complete, and, unknown to everyone watching, entirely orchestrated by Dominic himself. 3 days earlier, he had carefully planted fabricated evidence of financial troubles in locations where Vanessa would find them. Bank statements showing massive losses, foreclosure warnings, and a fake letter from a business partner pulling out of their biggest development project. Simultaneously, he had ensured rumors of his company's impending bankruptcy reached her family through carefully selected channels. The final touch had been the lipstick-stained collar on his shirt, applied by Diana in his office before being strategically placed in his laundry basket. Predictably, Vanessa had seized upon this evidence of infidelity, the perfect public justification for what she had been planning in private for months. Now, as he stood in silent dignity amidst his scattered belongings, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. The spectators murmured with fresh interest as two officers approached. Vanessa's triumphant expression faltered. "I didn't call the police," she said, suddenly uncertain. "Mrs. Russo?" the female officer asked, climbing the steps to where Vanessa stood. "Yes, that's me. Has my husband filed some kind of complaint?" She gestured dismissively toward Dominic. "Because I have every right to remove him from my home." The officer's expression remained professional. "Ma'am, we're here to escort you off the property. It's not in your name anymore." Vanessa's jaw dropped, her face draining of color. "What are you talking about? This is my home." The male officer produced a document. According to county records, this property was transferred solely to Dominic Russo's name 3 months ago. "We have an order here stating that you're no longer a legal resident." "That's impossible." Vanessa snatched the paper, her hands trembling. "I never signed anything." From the window, her family's expressions had transformed from smug satisfaction to alarm. They rushed outside as Vanessa frantically scanned the document. "Actually, you did." Dominic finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. He approached, hands in pockets, no longer the humiliated husband, but something altogether more dangerous. "Remember that renovation agreement for the kitchen remodel? Page 7, paragraph 3 had a clause about property transfer. You signed it, along with the notary." "You tricked me," she whispered, the realization dawning in her eyes. "No, Vanessa. I simply play by your rules." Dominic turned to the officers. "I'd like my house cleared of unwelcome guests, please. All of them." His gaze moved to his in-laws, who had fallen into stunned silence. As the officers began explaining to a hysterical Vanessa that she needed to collect essential belongings and leave, Dominic's phone buzzed with a text from Ted Gaines. "All accounts transferred. Safe deposit boxes emptied. Credit cards canceled. Phase 1 complete." Dominic pocketed his phone and began calmly collecting his clothes from the lawn, folding each item precisely before placing it in his car. To the observers, he appeared as a man maintaining dignity in crisis. Only he knew this was merely the opening move in a carefully choreographed game of destruction. Vanessa's mother approached him, her aristocratic features pinched with fury. "You won't get away with this. Do you know who we are in this community?" Dominic smiled, the expression chilling in its sincerity. "Mrs. Harmon, I'm counting on exactly who you think you are. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe the officers need you to vacate my property." As he drove away, leaving Vanessa and her family to be escorted off the premises, Dominic made another call. "Mason, prepare the wall surveillance package. It's time for phase 2. In his rearview mirror, he could see Vanessa frantically calling someone, undoubtedly Preston, her face a mask of panic. The mask she had worn throughout their marriage had finally slipped, revealing the truth he had always suspected was there. And now, everyone would see it. Chapter 4. Foundations of Revenge. The luxury condo overlooking the river had been Dominic's secret purchase 2 years earlier, an insurance policy against precisely this kind of contingency. Minimalist and functional, it suited his true nature better than the ostentatious home Vanessa had insisted upon. 3 large monitors dominated one wall of his home office, displaying surveillance feeds, financial data, and a complex flowchart labeled contingency plan. On his desk sat a chessboard, a game in progress with only a few moves remaining before checkmate. A knock at the door announced Mason's arrival. "They've taken the bait," Mason said without preamble, dropping a thick folder on Dominic's desk. "Vanessa moved in with Walsh yesterday. They're already planning how to rebuild after your supposed financial collapse." Dominic nodded, unsurprised. "And the rumors?" "Spreading exactly as predicted. Your bankruptcy is the talk of every country club and boardroom. Walsh is already approaching your clients, offering to take over your contracts." "Perfect." Dominic opened the folder, scanning the surveillance photos of Vanessa and Preston together at his estate. "And my sister?" Mason's expression darkened. "She met with them this morning. Handed over what she claims are copies of your actual financial records, trying to help them figure out where you might have hidden assets." A muscle twitched in Dominic's jaw, the only sign that this betrayal affected him. Natalie, who he had protected from their alcoholic father, who he had put through college, whose gambling debts he had paid off secretly to save her marriage. The records she gave them, they're the decoys? Yes, the ones you prepared. She has no access to the real information. Dominic nodded once, then turned to the monitors. "Begin phase 2, then, starting with Walsh Development's newest project." The next morning, headlines across local business news reported unexpected permit issues with Preston Walsh's flagship development, a luxury mall in the city center. Anonymous sources cited serious safety concerns in the preliminary construction, necessitating a complete work stoppage and review. Simultaneously, several of Walsh's investors received troubling financial analyses from a respected consulting firm, suggesting improprieties in how project funds were being allocated. The firm, secretly purchased by Dominic through shell companies months earlier, had impeccable credentials that made their reports impossible to dismiss. While Preston scrambled to contain these fires, Dominic met with Theodore Gaines at his downtown office. "The property transfers were just the beginning," Dominic explained, sliding a document across the desk. "I want you to file this immediately." Ted reviewed the paperwork, his eyebrows rising. "This is thorough. You've been planning this for some time." "Since the day I proposed to her," Dominic replied flatly. "I've never entered any situation without a contingency plan." "And your sister?" "The transfer of her condo ownership. Especially that." Dominic's voice was ice. "Implement everything exactly as outlined. No exceptions, no mercy." That evening, as reports of Walsh Development's stock dropping filtered in, Dominic received an unexpected visitor. Brooke Harmon stood at his door, her usual haughty demeanor replaced by obvious discomfort. "We need to talk," she said. In his sparse living room, Brooke perched awkwardly on the edge of a leather sofa. "Vanessa made a mistake," she began. "Did she send you?" Dominic asked, remaining standing. "No, she doesn't know I'm here. Look, our family has influence. This public spectacle isn't good for any of us. Maybe we can reach an arrangement, a quiet divorce, a fair settlement." Dominic studied her for a moment. "Interesting. You've never wanted to arrange anything with me before. What changed?" Brooke shifted uncomfortably. "We're practical people. This vendetta—" "Let me stop you there," Dominic interrupted. "Your father's company has significant investments with Walsh Development, doesn't it? And those investments are suddenly looking precarious." The color drained from Brooke's face. "Did you think I wouldn't know?" Dominic continued, his voice dangerously soft. "I've mapped every connection, every vulnerability. Your family backed the wrong horse, Brooke. What do you want?" "I want you to deliver a message." Dominic moved to the door, opening it. "Tell your sister and her lover that everything happening now is merely the foundation. The real structure hasn't even begun to rise." After she left, Dominic received a call from Diana. "You were right," she said. "They're accessing the decoy accounts you set up. They think they've found your hidden assets and the special content we planted. They found that too." Vanessa was especially interested in the offshore account information. Dominic smiled grimly. "Perfect. Keep monitoring. When they make their move, I want to know immediately." Later that night, he stood on his balcony overlooking the city lights, a glass of whiskey in hand. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Dom, We need to talk. Please. Things aren't what they seem. He read it twice before deleting it without response. In his world, betrayal had only one answer, and it was already in motion. On his chessboard, he moved a piece. 3 moves to checkmate. Chapter 5. Structural Weaknesses. The exclusive Ridgemont Club had been the center of Philadelphia high society for generations. Preston Walsh's family had been founding members. Dominic had been admitted only after his marriage to Vanessa, and even then, with poorly disguised reluctance from the membership committee. Tonight, however, Dominic walked through its hallowed halls with the confidence of a man who owned the ground beneath his feet. Conversations hushed as he passed, members uncertain how to treat the supposedly bankrupt contractor. The rumors of his financial ruin had spread exactly as he'd planned, but he had chosen this moment to reappear in society. In the main dining room, Preston and Vanessa sat with her parents and Natalie, their tables centrally located to showcase their alliance. They froze mid-conversation when Dominic approached. "Good evening," he said pleasantly, as if greeting casual acquaintances rather than the architects of his intended destruction. Preston recovered first, his handsome face arranging itself into a mask of sympathy. "Dominic, brave of you to show your face here. I've always found courage comes easier when you have nothing to hide," Dominic replied, his gaze moving deliberately to Vanessa, who seemed unable to meet his eyes. "Perhaps we could speak privately," Preston suggested, clearly hoping to move their confrontation away from curious onlookers. "No need. I only stopped by to congratulate you on your engagement." Vanessa's head snapped up. "What?" Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that why you're celebrating?" The diamond on your finger suggested as much. The table fell into uncomfortable silence. The ring, an ostentatious emerald-cut diamond, had indeed been Preston's gift, but they had agreed to keep their engagement private until Vanessa's divorce was finalized. "How did you?" Preston began. "No," Dominic finished for him. "I make it my business to know things, Preston. For instance, I know about the offshore accounts you've been accessing. The ones you think belong to me." The blood drained from Preston's face. "Interesting choices you've been making with those funds," Dominic continued conversationally, "especially the transfers to certain officials overseeing your development projects." Mr. Harmon stood abruptly. "We won't sit here and be threatened." "No threat, just an observation." Dominic smiled. "Enjoy your evening. I hear the lamb is excellent." As he turned to leave, Natalie caught his arm. "Dom, please. Let me explain." He looked at his sister's hand until she removed it, then met her eyes. "You're sitting at the wrong table, Natalie. But I suspect you'll realize that soon enough." The maitre d' approached as Dominic reached the door. "Mr. Russo, a gentleman is asking to speak with you urgently." In the club's foyer stood Commissioner Raymond Barnes, head of the city's Building and Safety Department, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Mr. Russo, I've reviewed the documentation your office submitted regarding the Walsh development projects," Barnes said without preamble. "The structural integrity issues are concerning, to say the least." "I thought they might be," Dominic replied. "I felt it was my civic duty to bring them to your attention. We'll need to conduct a full investigation. All their projects will be suspended pending review. Of course, public safety must come first." As the commissioner left, Dominic saw Preston hurrying toward him, face flushed with anger. "What the hell did you do?" Preston demanded. "Me? I simply provided relevant information to the appropriate authorities." Dominic straightened Preston's tie in a gesture that was more threat than courtesy. "Information about substandard materials, compromised foundations, falsified safety reports. That's a damn lie, is it? The evidence suggests otherwise. Evidence that's now in the hands of not just the commissioner, but the DA's office as well." Preston's confidence wavered. "You can't prove anything." "I don't have to. The phantom offshore accounts you've been so eager to drain? Every transaction you've made has been documented, including your attempts to bribe officials using what you thought were my hidden funds." Understanding dawned in Preston's eyes. "You set us up." "No, Preston. I simply provided the rope. You and Vanessa chose to hang yourselves with it." Dominic checked his watch. "I'd estimate you have about 48 hours before the indictments come down. I'd use that time wisely if I were you." Back in his condo that night, Dominic answered a call from Ted Gaines. They've taken the bait completely, Ted reported. Walsh tried to empty the decoy accounts this afternoon. The transactions have been flagged for investigation exactly as we arranged. And Natalie's situation? Eviction notice served this morning. Her husband received the photos of her meetings with Vanessa, along with the records of her gambling debts. He's filing for divorce and custody. Dominic closed his eyes briefly. This part brought him no pleasure, but in his world, consequences were absolute. Proceed with the rest as planned. The next morning, the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer carried the headline, Walsh Development Under Investigation. Safety violations and financial irregularities alleged. Dominic read it over breakfast, then made a call to Mason. Activate the final phase. On his chessboard, he moved his queen. 2 moves to checkmate. Chapter 6. Structural Collapse. The Walsh family estate had stood for 3 generations as a symbol of wealth and influence. Tonight, its grand ballroom hosted Philadelphia's elite for what Preston had planned as a reassurance to investors and a show of strength against mounting troubles. Instead, it was about to become the stage for his complete undoing. Dominic arrived alone, his entrance causing a ripple of whispers. Despite rumors of his financial ruin, he moved with the quiet authority that had always distinguished him from those born to privilege. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, power rather than flash, and carried an envelope in his inner pocket that would change everything. Preston intercepted him immediately, steering him to a private alcove. "You have some nerve showing up here," Preston hissed, his polished veneer cracking. "I was invited," Dominic replied calmly, producing an invitation. "That's impossible. I personally reviewed the guest list. Your mother added me last minute. She always did have a soft spot for me after I renovated her summer home at cost." Dominic smiled thinly. "Lovely party. Shame it's your last." Preston's confidence wavered. The past week had been a nightmare. Building permits revoked, investors withdrawing, banks freezing accounts pending investigation. Somehow, evidence of safety violations and financial improprieties had materialized in regulatory offices across the city. "Whatever you think you're doing, it won't work," Preston insisted. "My family has weathered bigger storms than you. Perhaps, but they've never weathered me." Across the room, Vanessa was deep in conversation with Preston's mother, clearly working to charm the Walsh matriarch. She hadn't noticed Dominic's arrival, giving him time to implement the final phase of his plan. He approached Theodore Gaines, who stood near the bar strategically placed to observe the proceedings. "Is everything ready?" Dominic asked quietly. Ted nodded. "The federal agents are waiting for your signal. The evidence package was delivered to the prosecutor this morning. And our friend at the Tribune? In position. The story breaks in tomorrow's edition regardless, but he's here to capture the arrest if it happens tonight." "Perfect." Dominic scanned the room. "And Natalie?" "Arrived 10 minutes ago. She's with her husband by the east entrance." Dominic saw his sister across the crowded ballroom, her face drawn with worry as she spoke urgently to her husband, Gregory. The photos Dominic had sent revealing her betrayal had devastated their marriage. She looked up, meeting his gaze with pleading eyes. He turned away. The moment had arrived. Dominic nodded to Ted, who discreetly sent a text message. Within seconds, the main doors opened and 6 federal agents in dark suits entered the ballroom, moving purposefully toward Preston. The crowd parted, conversations dying as the lead agent approached. "Preston Walsh?" the agent asked, though it was clearly a formality. Preston's face drained of color. "What is this about?" "You're under arrest for wire fraud, bribery of public officials, and violations of federal building safety regulations." The agent produced a warrant. "We have evidence of multiple transfers from offshore accounts to city officials overseeing your projects." Vanessa pushed through the stunned crowd. "This is ridiculous. You can't just—" "Mrs. Russo," the agent cut her off. "We have a warrant for your arrest as well, for conspiracy and accessory to fraud." As the agents began reading them their rights, Dominic approached. "You did this," Preston snarled. "You manipulated everything." "No, Preston. I simply revealed who you truly are." Dominic removed the envelope from his pocket. "The accounts you thought were mine? They were opened in your name. Every transaction, every bribe, every dirty deal, all with your digital fingerprints. That's impossible. I never. Technology is a remarkable thing, especially in the hands of someone with the right skills and motivation. Dominic glanced at Vanessa. You chose the wrong man to betray. As the agents led them away, the ballroom erupted in chaos. Dominic stood calmly at the center, the architect surveying his creation. Natalie broke free from her husband and approached Dominic, tears streaming down her face. Dom, please. I was trying to protect you, she begged. Vanessa threatened to destroy you if I didn't help her. I was feeding her false information, trying to buy time. Stop. Dominic's voice was quiet but cut through her excuses like a blade. I saw the bank transfers, Natalie. $50,000 from Preston to your account the day after you gave them access to what you thought were my financial records. Her face crumpled. I needed the money for Gregory's medical treatments. Our insurance wouldn't cover it. I was desperate. You could have come to me. I did. 3 months ago. You said business was tight and you couldn't help. For the first time that night, Dominic's composure faltered. What are you talking about? I came to your office. Explained about Gregory's experimental treatment. You said you couldn't spare the cash. Dominic's mind raced back. 3 months ago, he had been in the middle of orchestrating his plan against Vanessa and Preston. He remembered Natalie's visit, but had been distracted, dismissive. You never mentioned it was for medical treatments, he said slowly. I was too proud to beg. Natalie wiped at her tears. When Preston approached me later, offering money for information, I took it. But Dom, I swear, I only gave them what you would want them to see. I was playing both sides. Before Dominic could respond, Gregory joined them, placing a protective arm around Natalie. It's true, he said, his voice weak from his illness. She was trying to help me, and help you too. The details she gave them were deliberately misleading. Dominic looked between them, centuries of distrust warring with the evidence before him. Finally, he spoke. We'll discuss this later. For now, you both need to leave. What happens next isn't something you want to witness. As they departed, Ted approached. The press is having a field day. The Walsh Empire is collapsing in real time. And the Harmons? Mr. Harmon just received notification that his investment firm's assets are frozen pending investigation of their connection to Walsh Development. Dominic nodded, satisfaction coursing through him. And the final piece? In place. When they post bail, if they can post bail, they'll find there's nowhere to run. Outside the estate, as reporters swarmed and camera flashes illuminated the night, Dominic walked calmly to his car. Behind him, the Walsh legacy crumbled, exactly as he had designed it. On the chessboard of his mind, he moved his final piece. Checkmate. Chapter 7. Among the Ruins. The downtown courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when Vanessa and Preston emerged from their bail hearing. They had spent 3 nights in custody before Preston's mother had managed to arrange the substantial funds required for their release. The terms were strict: surrender of passports, electronic monitoring, and prohibition from accessing any financial accounts beyond a court-approved allowance for basic living expenses. Preston's face was haggard, his designer suit replaced by a department store alternative that hung poorly on his frame. Vanessa, however, maintained a facade of defiance as cameras flashed around them. She had spent years cultivating her public image, and even now believed she could salvage something from the wreckage. My husband orchestrated this entire situation out of spite, she declared to the gathered press. Preston and I are innocent victims of his vindictive scheme. When the truth comes out, we will be completely exonerated. From across the street, Dominic watched the performance from inside his car, unmoved by her attempts to rewrite the narrative. Beside him sat Diana Wells, who had been instrumental in documenting every aspect of their conspiracy. She's still trying to spin it, Diana observed. Let her try, Dominic replied. The evidence speaks for itself. The evidence was indeed overwhelming. Hundreds of pages of documentation showing how Preston had cut corners on building safety, bribed officials, and misled investors. Equally damning were recorded conversations between Preston and Vanessa discussing their plans to take everything from Dominic. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that every move they had made in the past 6 months had been anticipated and subtly guided by Dominic's invisible hand. As Vanessa and Preston pushed through the media scrum toward their waiting car, Dominic made a call. "Release the financial records," he instructed Ted. "All of them." Within the hour, every major news outlet received comprehensive documentation of Preston's financial misdeeds, not just those related to his development projects, but personal indiscretions as well: tax evasion, hidden assets, and misappropriation of family funds. The Walsh family matriarch, who had reluctantly secured her son's bail, received her own special delivery: evidence that Preston had been quietly selling off family heirlooms and artworks, replacing them with forgeries to fund his lifestyle and affair with Vanessa. By evening, Preston's bail had been revoked after his mother reported the theft of family assets, sending him back to detention. Vanessa, suddenly alone and facing mounting legal troubles, retreated to a modest hotel, the only accommodation her court-approved allowance would permit. That night, Dominic met with Natalie and Gregory at their small suburban home. The atmosphere was tense, years of trust shattered between them. "The treatment is working," Natalie said quietly after serving coffee in their modest living room. "The doctors say Gregory's showing significant improvement." Dominic nodded, studying his brother-in-law's healthier appearance. "I'm glad." "Dom," Gregory began, "what Natalie did was a betrayal," Dominic finished for him. "One I'm still processing. I never gave them anything that would truly hurt you," Natalie insisted. "Everything was calculated to make them think they had an advantage while actually leading them into your trap." Dominic set down his cup. "If that's true, why take their money?" "Because we were desperate." Tears formed in Natalie's eyes. "The experimental treatment cost $200,000. Our insurance wouldn't cover it. When you turned me down—" "I never turned you down for medical expenses," Dominic interrupted. "You never mentioned Gregory was sick. I told you he needed specialized treatment. You were distracted, looking at some blueprint. You said business was tight and changed the subject." Dominic searched his memory, recalling the day in question. He had been finalizing plans for the trap he was setting for Vanessa and Preston, his focus singular. "I failed you," he finally acknowledged. "And you betrayed me in return." The silence that followed was heavy with decades of shared history. The foster homes they had endured together, the protection he had provided, the opportunities he had created for her. "The question now," Dominic continued, "is where we go from here." Natalie reached for her husband's hand. "What happens to us depends on you, doesn't it? Just like it always has." Dominic stood, moving to the window to look out at the quiet street. This house, their house, was technically his now. One of the many properties he had quietly transferred to his name as part of his contingency plan. He could evict them tomorrow if he chose. "Gregory's treatment," he said at length. "Is there more needed?" "Yes," Gregory answered. "Another 6 months at least." Dominic turned back to face them. "I'll cover it. All of it. And this house stays in your name." Relief washed over their faces, but it was short-lived. "But," Dominic continued, "we're not family anymore. Not after this. The treatment gets paid for. The house is yours, but that's the end." "Dom, please," Natalie began, but he raised a hand to silence her. "You made your choice. I'm making mine." He moved to the door. "I don't forgive betrayal, Natalie. Not even from you." As he drove away, his phone rang. It was Mason. "You need to see this," Mason said without preamble. "Vanessa just went on local news. She's painting herself as a domestic abuse victim, claiming you manipulated and controlled her throughout your marriage." Dominic's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Send me the clip." Watching the interview later in his condo, he observed Vanessa's masterful performance. Tears at the right moments, careful wording that implied without directly claiming, the perfect blend of vulnerability and indignation. "He isolated me from my family," she told the sympathetic interviewer. "Controlled our finances. When I finally found the courage to leave, he orchestrated this elaborate scheme to destroy me." It was compelling television. It was also completely false. "She's good," Diana commented, watching alongside him. "People might actually believe her." "Some will," Dominic agreed. "But not for long." He opened his laptop and began typing instructions to Ted, outlining the final phase of his plan. The contingency he had hoped wouldn't be necessary, but had prepared for nonetheless. It was time to ensure that Vanessa Russo would never reinvent herself again. Chapter 8. The Final Blueprint. The luxury rehabilitation facility was nestled in the Pocono Mountains, its sprawling grounds and discreet security providing privacy for wealthy clients recovering from various addictions. Preston Walsh had checked himself in 3 days after being released on bail a second time, claiming prescription drug dependency brought on by the stress of his legal troubles. In reality, he was hiding from the press, from his family's recriminations, and from Vanessa's increasingly desperate attempts to contact him. He sat alone on a private balcony overlooking the mountains, nursing a permitted glass of sparkling water when a staff member approached. "Mr. Walsh, you have a visitor." Preston turned, expecting his lawyer. Instead, he found himself face to face with Dominic Russo. "What did you get in here?" Preston demanded, instinctively backing away. "I own controlling interest in the parent company that manages this facility," Dominic replied calmly, taking the seat opposite him. "I own many things you wouldn't expect." Preston's hand trembled slightly as he set down his glass. "What do you want? Haven't you done enough?" "That depends entirely on your perspective." Dominic crossed his legs comfortably. "I'm here to offer you a proposition. I'm not interested in anything you have to offer. Not even your freedom, the return of some of your assets, a chance to rebuild some semblance of life." Preston's expression shifted from defiance to wary interest. "What's the catch?" "Vanessa." Dominic produced a folder. "I need your full testimony about her role in everything, the planning, the manipulation, her ideas for how to destroy me. All of it, under oath, with supporting evidence. You want me to throw her under the bus. I want the truth documented. You were both architects of my intended destruction. Now you can choose to be the one who walks away with something left." Preston hesitated only briefly before reaching for the folder. "What kind of deal are we talking about?" "You plead guilty to reduced charges, provide complete testimony against Vanessa, and surrender certain assets. In exchange, my influence ensures a minimal sentence, possibly even home confinement. You keep your family home and enough resources to start over, albeit on a much smaller scale. And if I refuse?" Dominic's smile was cold. "Then the additional evidence I've been withholding gets submitted to the prosecutor tomorrow, including details about your previous legal troubles in Boston that your family worked so hard to bury." The color drained from Preston's face. "How could you possibly know about that?" "I know everything about everyone who enters my life, Preston. It's how I've survived." Back in the city, Vanessa was making a last desperate attempt to salvage her situation. She had arranged a meeting with Dominic's lawyer, Theodore Gaines, hoping to negotiate some kind of settlement. In Ted's austere office, she put on her most contrite expression. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice carefully modulated to convey regret. "I let Preston manipulate me into betraying Dominic. I see that now." Ted's face remained impassive. "Mrs. Russo, let's not waste each other's time. We both know that's not what happened. It's my word against Preston's, and he's desperate enough to say anything." She leaned forward. "I still care for Dominic. All I'm asking for is enough to start over quietly. I'll sign whatever non-disclosure agreement you want. An interesting proposal. Unfortunately, it's not just Preston's word against yours." Ted opened his laptop, turning the screen toward her. "We have extensive documentation of your conversations planning Dominic's downfall. Voice recordings, text messages, emails, meeting notes in your handwriting detailing how to maximize the financial damage." Vanessa's confident facade cracked slightly. "Those could be manipulated, perhaps, but the video footage would be harder to explain away." He played a clip from what was clearly a hidden camera in Preston's office. Vanessa's voice came through with perfect clarity. "I married him for his potential, but Preston, you're already everything he's trying to become. Once we've stripped him of everything, we can finally be together openly." Vanessa's face hardened as the enormity of her situation became clear. "What does he want?" "Complete surrender. You sign over any remaining claims to marital assets, agree to never speak publicly about him again, and face the criminal charges without dragging his name through further mud." And if I refuse, then by this time tomorrow, every news outlet in the country will have footage of your most private conversations with Preston. Not just the plotting, but the intimate moments as well. Vanessa blanched. He wouldn't dare. That's revenge porn. It's illegal. The footage would be carefully edited to remove anything explicit while leaving the damning context intact. And it would come from an anonymous source impossible to trace back to Dominic. Ted, close the laptop. He's offering you a chance to retain some dignity, Mrs. Russo. I suggest you take it. That evening, Dominic sat in his condo, reviewing the day's developments. Preston had signed the agreement, choosing self-preservation over loyalty to Vanessa. Ted had reported that Vanessa was considering her options, which both men understood was merely delaying the inevitable. A knock at the door surprised him. Opening it, he found Brooke Harmon standing in the hallway, her usual haughty demeanor replaced by evident distress. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. Dominic stepped aside, allowing her to enter. "This is unexpected. Believe me, this isn't a social call." Brooke paced the living room nervously. "My father suffered a heart attack this morning. The doctors say the stress of his firm's asset freeze was a contributing factor." "I'm sorry to hear that," Dominic said, his tone neutral. "Is there a point to this visit? My father built that firm from nothing. It's his life's work. The frozen assets are crippling not just him, but dozens of employees who had nothing to do with Vanessa's choices. Collateral damage," Dominic observed dispassionately. "Unfortunately, unavoidable." Brooke stopped pacing to face him directly. "What do you want, Dominic? What would it take to call off this scorched earth campaign?" "Why would I do that? Your father, your entire family, made it abundantly clear that I was never good enough, that I was merely a stepping stone for Vanessa." "We were wrong," Brooke admitted, the words clearly difficult for her. "You're nothing like what we thought. You're far more dangerous." A cold smile touched Dominic's lips. "Now that is the first honest thing your family has ever said to me. Please, my father might not survive another shock like this. He's not a young man." Dominic considered her for a long moment. "Your family's firm stays frozen until the investigation is complete. That's non-negotiable. But I could ensure the investigation focuses solely on transactions related to Walsh development, leaving the rest operational." Hope flickered in Brooke's eyes. "You would do that? On one condition. Name it. I want a full written confession from you detailing how your family encouraged Vanessa to use me for my growing success while planning for her to eventually leave with maximum financial gain. I want dates, conversations, specific plots. Everything." Brooke paled. "That would destroy our family's reputation." "Yes," Dominic agreed simply. "It would. I can't do that. Then we have nothing more to discuss." He moved toward the door. "Wait," Brooke called. What if I gave you information instead? Something you don't know yet." Dominic paused. "I'm listening." "Vanessa is pregnant. With Preston's child." Brooke watched his face carefully. "She found out just before everything happened. That's why they were accelerating their plans against you." For the first time in their conversation, genuine surprise registered on Dominic's face. This was the one variable he hadn't anticipated. "She hasn't told you because she's planning to use it for sympathy in the media," Brooke continued. "Play the expectant mother card to garner public support." Dominic recovered quickly. "Thank you for the information. I'll have Ted draft the paperwork to isolate your father's legitimate business interest from the investigation." After Brooke left, Dominic made a call to Diana. "I need confirmation on a pregnancy claim," he instructed. "And if it's true, I need to adjust our strategy accordingly." The game had changed, but like any master architect, Dominic knew how to modify his blueprints when unexpected conditions arose. His revenge would not be denied. It would simply be redesigned. Chapter 9. The Final Reckoning. Rain fell steadily on the day of the hearing, washing the city streets clean as Dominic arrived at the courthouse. Inside, the atmosphere was tense as attorneys for all parties gathered in the judge's chambers for what would determine the direction of both the civil and criminal proceedings. Preston Walsh sat with his attorney, looking diminished in an off-the-rack suit, his usual confidence replaced by resignation. Across the room, Vanessa maintained her composure, though the strain of recent weeks showed in the shadows beneath her eyes. The pregnancy Brooke had revealed was not yet visible beneath her conservative dress. Judge Margaret Holloway, known for her no-nonsense approach, reviewed the documents before her with methodical precision. "Before we proceed," she began, "I want to be clear that I've reviewed all submitted evidence and find it disturbing, to say the least." Her sharp gaze moved from Vanessa to Preston. "Mr. Walsh, you've agreed to testify against Mrs. Russo in exchange for consideration in your sentencing. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Preston confirmed, avoiding Vanessa's glare. "And Mrs. Russo, you maintain that you were manipulated by both your husband and Mr. Walsh." "That's correct, Your Honor," Vanessa responded, her voice steady. "I was caught between two controlling men." Judge Holloway's expression remained skeptical. "I see. And the extensive documentation of your planning sessions with Mr. Walsh? The recorded conversations where you explicitly discussed, and I quote, taking Dominic for everything he's worth?" Vanessa hesitated. "Those recordings lack context, Your Honor." "I disagree." Judge Holloway set down the papers. "Based on the evidence before me, I'm inclined to proceed with the full range of charges against both of you. However, there's been a motion filed that offers an alternative resolution." She nodded to Theodore Gaines, who stood. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Russo, is willing to withdraw certain civil claims and recommend leniency in the criminal charges under very specific conditions." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Proceed, counselor." Ted laid out the terms. Vanessa and Preston would both plead guilty to reduced charges, avoiding maximum sentences. In exchange, they would surrender all claims to disputed assets, sign comprehensive non-disclosure agreements, and both would leave the state permanently after serving their sentences. Additionally, Preston would divest himself from any Philadelphia real estate ventures. "And there's one more condition," Ted added. "Mrs. Russo will agree to a paternity test for her unborn child. And if Mr. Russo is excluded as the father, she waives any future claims of child support or inheritance from him." Vanessa visibly flinched. She had not yet publicly acknowledged the pregnancy, intending to use it strategically later. "How did you?" she began, then fell silent under the judge's stern gaze. "Is this arrangement acceptable to the prosecution?" Judge Holloway asked the district attorney. "Given the overwhelming evidence Mr. Russo has provided in both cases, and his cooperation as the primary victim, we are amenable to these terms, Your Honor." The judge turned to Vanessa and Preston. "You have 15 minutes to consult with your attorneys and decide. Choose wisely." Outside the chambers, in a quiet corridor of the courthouse, Dominic stood alone by a window, watching the rain. Footsteps approached, and he turned to find Vanessa standing before him. "You knew," she said quietly. "About the baby. I know everything, Vanessa. That was always your mistake, underestimating me." She studied him, searching for any crack in his resolve. "What happened to you? The Dominic I married wasn't this calculating. He was," Dominic corrected her. "You just never bothered to look beyond the surface. Too focused on what I could provide, what I could become. And this is your revenge? Forcing me to admit my child isn't yours? Making me leave the state?" "No." Dominic stepped closer. "My revenge is ensuring you live with the consequences of your choices. The same courtesy you and Preston planned to extend to me." Her composure finally cracked. "I did love you once. In the beginning. Perhaps. But love without loyalty is meaningless." He checked his watch. "Your 15 minutes are nearly up. I suggest you take the deal. The alternative is far worse." When the proceedings resumed, both Vanessa and Preston accepted the terms. As the judge finalized the arrangements, Dominic sat perfectly still, his face betraying nothing of the satisfaction he felt. The machinery of his revenge had operated precisely as designed, grinding his enemies to dust without mercy. 3 months later, Dominic stood at the observation deck of his newest project, a sleek tower of glass and steel that would define Philadelphia's changing skyline. Mason joined him, surveying the construction progress below. "Walsh Development's assets were auctioned off yesterday," Mason reported. "We secured 3 of their prime locations at a fraction of market value." Dominic nodded. And the Harmon situation? Old Man Harmon's firm survived the investigation, though significantly diminished. They've been quiet since Brooke delivered that confession you wanted. And Natalie? Mason hesitated. Gregory's in remission. The treatment worked. They're moving to Colorado next month. Something flickered across Dominic's face. A momentary softening quickly suppressed. Good for them. You could call her Dom. Before they leave, Dominic remained silent, his gaze fixed on the rising structure below. After a moment, he changed the subject. The structural reinforcements for the East Wing, are they completed to specification? Mason sighed, recognizing the deflection. Yes, everything is proceeding exactly according to your plans. As always. That evening, alone in his condo, Dominic received notification that Vanessa had given birth, a son, 2 weeks premature. The paternity test had already confirmed what they all knew. Preston was the father. According to the terms of their agreement, she would leave Pennsylvania after serving her reduced sentence, taking the child with her. He stood on his balcony, glass of whiskey in hand, contemplating the city he had conquered. The revenge that had consumed him for so long was complete. His enemies were vanquished, their lives in ruins. He had won, absolutely and without mercy. Yet victory fell hollow in the silence of his empty home. His phone rang. Diana Wells. I've verified everything, she reported without preamble. Preston's remaining assets have been liquidated and transferred offshore, outside the reach of the authorities. He's planning to flee to Argentina after serving his home confinement, in violation of his probation terms. And Vanessa? Still in the hospital with the baby, but she's been making calls to contacts in California. Appears she's planning to rebuild there once she's served her time. Dominic considered this information. Forward everything to Ted. If they're violating the terms of our agreement, the consequences will be immediate and severe. After hanging up, he returned to the balcony. Below, the city continued its rhythms, indifferent to the human dramas playing out within its boundaries. For a moment, he considered calling Natalie, his only family, despite her betrayal. The thought lingered, then faded. He had built himself from nothing once. He would do it again, this time without the vulnerabilities that came with trusting others. The lesson had been learned, the price paid in full. In the distance, thunder rumbled as another storm approached the city. Dominic remained on the balcony, facing the darkening sky without flinching. He had weathered worse storms than this, had created them, controlled them, survived them. He was Dominic Russo, the architect of vengeance, and he never forgave. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.